and welcome to My Baking Journey, a podcast for bakers where you get to hear from some of the great minds in the baking industry. My name is Haf.
And my name is Rachel. I'm a baker. I know what it's like to be baking all day alone in my kitchen, experiencing the frustrations and struggles with no one else to guide or support me through it.
And I'm not a baker, but I've witnessed all the ups and downs that come with this industry and where it's hard to get a little bit of extra help.
So if you're looking for advice, tips, and amazing insight from various experienced bakers, you've come to the right place.
So let's give you a little insight into what's in store for you this week.
When I was making cakes, to start with, I was working 16-hour days by choice. I really wanted to do that. Like I was waking up, and I'm still waking up first thing in the morning, thinking about cake designs, thinking about my work, my art, my business. And if I was like that working for someone else in any corporate career, I think I would have been CEO of Nestle right now. It was quite scary, and I was prepared that I will not be earning any income. I chose to be an artist. What I know, if I will walk to any shop here in Brisbane, I know that I will walk out and they will order my product, 100%. The biggest help with having someone is not actually physical work. It's not that she will help me to cut the petals for my roses. It's not that. But it's having that peer that I'm sitting together with and discussing my ideas and saying, oh, what do you reckon? I've got this idea. I'm setting up this like angle for real. What do you reckon? It's lack of community of like-minded people. That's what the biggest challenge. My cake collapsed when they were about to cut.
Oh my gosh. Hey everyone. We're off to Brisbane, Australia this week to sit down with Ekaterina, or Ekats, as you may know her by. The timing of this conversation is quite fitting, as you're about to find out. And we meet Ekats at a point in her career where, although she's done so much already, I kind of get the feeling like she's just getting started. I mean, she's a highly creative person. She's been this way since a very early age. If you go look at her Instagram and you see how she's able to marry dresses and fashion with cakes, it's absolutely incredible. And she finds inspiration in so many things, and she can channel that into so many different areas. You know, after all, her corporate career was in sales and marketing for various well-known international brands. But she left all that, and she's got a lot of experience to draw on here. And she's definitely not keeping it to herself. She shares it, she teaches it, and she really allows other people to learn from her, which is really, really cool to watch. So this conversation is full of inspiring stories, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So let's not waste any more time. Here's our conversation with Ekats. Thank you, Ekaterina, so much for taking the time early in your morning to come on our podcast. This is a really exciting one for me. I say that because I've always liked design. I'm not the cake baker here. Obviously, the expert is sitting on the other side of the table. But design for me has always been really interesting, particularly in other shapes and forms like architecture and landscapes and things like that. And that kind of visual aspect for me has been very interesting. So when Rachel introduced me to your Instagram feed, that's when I really took to this element of design and, of course, your element of fashion and this beautiful integration of the two pieces together, which was just fantastic to see. And we've been doing some research on you. Though I'll be granted, there's not, based on your Instagram feed and a few other areas, it's hard to find out a lot of information from you because you don't have a book. You haven't been on, let's say, loads and loads of television. So we try to find what we can. But I got some interesting bits of information. And I'd like you to correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand this right, this month is your 10-year anniversary. And if that's the case, it's 10 years from when you first made your wedding cake that set the scene for you to get into making cakes and building what you've built today, 10 years later. Do I have this correct?
You are very correct here. It has been 10 years yesterday. So it was our
Congratulations.
anniversary yesterday.
Yeah,
and we usually celebrate today because today is Australia Day, if you don't know.
Oh, yes.
So, because we keep forgetting the date of our anniversary, and we decided it's Australia Day, so it's pretty much today.
Well, double congratulations.
There's no excuses for forgetting now, right? If it's Australia Day. As well.
Yes. And it was quite a journey with the wedding cake. I've never liked baking back then. I always liked creative side. I loved painting. I loved making clothes and lots of other things, but I never fancied any cooking or baking. And back then I couldn't even cook an egg. But my husband and I, my fiance and I back then, we decided we want to do it yourself wedding. And I always wanted massive cake. We only had 40 guests, only 30 adults and 10 kids. So very small wedding. And I wanted a 5-story cake that will be taller than me. Then we looked around and we were like, oh, it's way too expensive to order one. And I said, oh, well, we'll do it ourselves. We can do it. And I completed half-a-day course, how to work with fondant. I never even heard of the word fondant back then. And my husband Googled how to bake a traditional English cake. He's an Englishman, and he baked all these 5 tiers. The biggest tier, I think it was 14-inch. And it's taken him several days to bake, several goes, because when he was baking, the middle was always unbaked and the outer was burned. We didn't know what we're doing. He kept baking. At the end, we actually spent more than we would have spent if we were to order the cake. And it was so much stress. And on top of that, we lived in Sydney, but the wedding was in a Gold Coast. So all those 5 tiers had to be flown from Sydney to Gold Coast. And my husband had a bucks party in Gold Coast. So each of his groomsmen had the tier of the cake on their laps when they were flying back.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty simple cake. It was just a white fondant and it wasn't sharp edges. It was just very traditional style.
I've seen the cake. It's absolutely beautiful, actually. Yeah. And also how it's decorated with fresh flowers.
Yeah, it was very special. It's a nice memory. And I never thought that I will ever be involved in cake making because I remember we were rolling fondant for the bottom tier because all these tiers were flown without fondant. So we had to rent a big hotel, not hotel room, but like Airbnb type. And we were rolling fondant at 2 a.m. on the night before So if anyone ever asks me, oh, I'm making my own wedding cake, that's my word of advice because I know how it is.
That's very stressful. Do you think, did it taste good at least?
I don't like fruitcake. So I didn't. I tasted a lot when my husband was baking and there was a lot of leftovers. So we were feeding on the cake for, I don't know, a couple of months when he was baking. And I didn't even eat it on the day of wedding. And we froze the top tier. We took it back to Sydney. We had it in the freezer for 3 or 4 years. And I think we never ended up eating it.
So how did that get you into baking, since that was quite a stressful environment? Obviously, you did your half-day fondant and your husband did a lot of the baking. But what happened?
Can you imagine? Be like, I never want to touch cake again after doing that, right?
Actually, I thought so at 3 a.m. when we were rolling and piping fondant. But then on the day of the wedding, when people were commenting on the cake, and even the hotel, we were in Versace Hotel, which is a really nice hotel, and everyone was commenting how beautiful the cake is, and they were asking the contacts who baked the cake. I actually felt this glory, so I was like, oh, that's actually not too bad. Even though I only slept for 3 hours, I feel great. But it's never made me think that I want to start baking cakes because I had a nice corporate career and I was dreaming of becoming CEO of Nestle back then. So I was all sorted there, and I started baking probably 7 years ago when I wanted to bake first cake for our son for his birthday. And again, the journey was great. I really loved it. And there's a nice cake artist here, very talented cake artist who used to be a teacher. Her name is Catherine Sabath. She is Australian, charismatic lady. And a couple of colleagues brought me to see her performing cake making. So it wasn't hands-on class, but it was just demonstration. And I was like, oh, well, that looks really fun and a lot of colors. And I decided to do something similar for my son. And again, I got a lot of comments from other parents, and Then I thought, well, why don't I make another one? And that's how I started my baking journey, almost a career, because probably after 5 or 6 cakes, I got the first order. And the person suggested to pay money. I was like, oh no, it was a neighbor. And I said, no, don't pay anything. I'm just doing it for fun. So for the first year of my cake baking, I was giving them away. I really loved it. I was coming back from work and I was making new cake. I was bringing some to work and all my colleagues were quite spoiled. Then all the neighbors were getting cakes, all the friends, everyone who would invite me to the birthday party, they knew that I'm coming with a cake gift. And I think I started properly charging maybe after a year of a lot of practice.
Yeah. Okay. So because you still have your corporate job during this time.
Yes.
You're doing this on the side. Because I went back through, I'm going to sound like a stalker here. I went back through your entire Instagram all the way to the beginning. And I noticed that you started matching dresses with cakes somewhere in the region of 2015, 2016. So quite a while ago, several years ago. But this has become what people know you for today is this amazing blend of fashion with cake. And in some cases, some of your cakes blending in perfectly with the dress that you might have chosen, or it's the other way around. You've chosen a dress and from that you've developed a cake. Going back to that time, was there any indication that you were thinking, okay, I could probably replace my trajectory in my corporate career. I could walk away from that and do this instead? Or did that really just not happen until a specific moment where you said, this is really what I want to do?
Well, it wasn't connected to fashion, but maybe it was. There's a couple of questions I understand you asking about. First is how it happened that I started matching the cakes.
Yeah, let's start with that.
That was because I had a lot of different outfits just because I naturally love dressing up. And I think it's because of my mom. It's all her fault. My mom, well, if we're going all the way back, she's coming from the family of 9 and it was post-war. Very poor family living on 20 square meters. Basically, they didn't have a lot of resources to buy nice outfits. And my mom, she started sewing herself some clothes when she was a teenager so she can look pretty. And then when she had me, I think she dedicated herself to me and my sister. So I was dressing us up. She was making a lot of beautiful dresses and I was always like a little doll. And that's how naturally I become addicted to fashion. And I remember getting my first job when I was 14 was because I wanted to buy fancy magazines like Cosmopolitan, Harper's Bazaar, because I was looking at all these models and different bags and shoes and dresses and thinking, I want to be like that. And that's actually ever pushed me to work and to get career growth and income to be dressed up. And when I started baking cakes, there was a lot of colors and then I had a lot of colors in my wardrobe. And I was thinking, well, okay, this cake is yellow and black and why don't I just match it and take a picture? Then I got a lot of likes and feedback and everyone's like, oh, that looks great. So I kept doing this just so I can wear my outfits a bit more often.
It's sometimes nice just to get glam, right? Use that excuse to get dressed up and
Definitely
put a nice dress on it with the cake.
Yeah. And in fact, I think that was one of the reasons why I decided to walk out of my corporate career where I had to be quite formal and dressing up in nice suits, which were nice, but they were very formal. So I couldn't be sitting like this and having conversation. I was thinking, well, I want to be myself. Like I want to create my own brand where I can represent myself. I can wear anything I want and build it the way I want it to be. So that was my big motivation.
How long was that from your son's first birthday to when you actually quit your job?
2 years.
Yeah. So it takes time, right, to come to the conclusion that you do want to quit your job. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that's building in the background, especially when you've had such a successful career.
It's always so scary because you know that you have stability, you have your monthly paycheck, you have your paid holidays and everything else like insurance. And then you're walking away, especially with the career that I chose, which was artistic career. And we know that it's not always successful. It was quite scary. And I was prepared that I will not be earning any income. I chose to be an artist, and maybe it was a bit of a middle-age crisis back then. I don't know, whatever crisis. I was thinking, what's the point in life? Like, if you're not enjoying 100% what you're doing. And I will tell you what, when I was making cakes, to start with, I was working 16-hour days by choice. I really wanted to do that. Like, I was waking up, and I'm still waking up first thing in the morning, thinking about cake designs, thinking about my work, my art, my business. And if I was like that working for someone else in any corporate career, I think I would have been CEO of Nestle right now.
It's interesting. I think what's funny too is that a lot of bakers that we speak to who obviously go off and start their own business, they may or may not have had a career. They may or may not have had any business experience. You have a degree in business and marketing. And I'm just wondering, when you started out in that first phase and you were spending most of your time baking, not looking at, let's say, your financials or a business plan or anything like that, did you draw on any of your education to help you set up the business? Or was it just a bit more of, I'm just going to do cakes and let's just see what happens?
Yes, it was exactly like that. I would just do cakes and see what happens. And still, I like that. We're talking about financials. I have no idea whether my business is profitable or not. I don't. I have income, but I don't really. I have an accountant, and they will tell me if I'm in troubles, but
Yeah.
I'm really bad like that. In fact, I'm just signing up with a business school that will help me to establish my art as a business a bit. But right now it's an art purely. When people ask me some financial questions, I don't know how to answer.
I think it's very hard when you do set up your own business because you are wearing many different hats and you can't be good at everything. It's kind of impossible. I think also if you have quite a creative brain, it's very hard to actually think logically or with numbers and analysis. So I think this is a struggle that a lot of bakers, when they start up their business, I know it was certainly mine, like numbers are not my strength either, to wear all these many hats because all of a sudden it gets thrown on you. You just suddenly want to make cakes.
Yes.
You've been making them for the neighbors, you've been making them for friends, colleagues, friends of friends. And suddenly you've got to figure out, how do I price this? How do I make some income out of it? When also you're thinking about designs and creativity and you don't really want to go down that side of your brain.
Yeah, because numbers, they kill creativity. But if we going back to the question with regards to marketing and sales background, I see that experience definitely helps me a lot. Because firstly, I know how to sell my product. Before, when I was in sales, obviously since I was 18, I was in sales in corporate. And I was selling because I had to sell. I knew that's my aim. And I was almost like playing a role, if I'm remembering myself back, like I was playing a role. I knew the script, I knew what I need to say to the customer or potential customer, and then I was selling. Now, I don't need to think about script. I'm so passionate about my product. I believe in it. And I know that everyone I speak to about my product, without any intention to sell, they fall in love with it. Like if I have some assistant helping, I know they fall in love with the charisma about my brand. Because I truly believe in it and all the energy around it.
Has that always been the case, Ekaterina? Has it always been the case that when you were those early days, did you have that self-belief?
Yes, 100%. And when at one stage, I was planning to start selling chocolate. And I was thinking, all right, what I don't know is how to start the manufacturing process because I never had that experience. And I was involved with manufacturing, but I don't know all the steps, how to set it up, how to all the safety things connected to chocolate supply chain and things like that. But what I know, if I will walk to any shop here in Brisbane, I know that they will walk out and they will order my product 100%. I knew that even if they can't afford it, they will want to try it. And when I was selling some other products back then, someone else's products, my ratio wasn't that high. I probably would have sold 20% out of 100. Now I'm so passionate about it. I'll make sure that I don't even need to try and sell. I know I will walk in, I will talk about this, and now like we really want to try it.
This is brilliant. The level of confidence that you have when you started out is quite unique, I think, because a lot of bakers and just, I think, entrepreneurs in general, Ekaterina, will have a lot of self-doubt, right? You'll have days when things didn't work, or you made mistakes, or you feel like you've done 7 16-hour days in a row and you say to yourself, why am I doing this? You may not necessarily have had that experience, but I feel like it's what you've gone through is quite unique. And I think it's really inspiring to have the confidence to say, I'm going to go in this shop, I'm going to walk out with a new customer, and I'm going to repeat that process again and again. And I think that's just a really cool thing to think about as starting out, like you having so much confidence in your ability. It makes me wonder what sort of training that you put yourself through then over that few years before you set off on your own with baking. Did you go out and get classes? Did you just watch a lot of YouTube? How did you build your level and proficiency of baking up so high?
So if we're talking about baking, not selling, right? We're not talking about marketing.
Yes, specifically with your baking skills.
I'm really bad at training like that. I haven't done a lot of training. I've attended a few classes of I would say, people that I really admire. There's a person called Stéphane Leroux. He's French chocolatier, and he is an artist. He's just absolutely brilliant. And it was more for inspiration because it wasn't hands-on class or anything like that. So there was few classes I attended just because I wanted to meet those people, to get the energy. But overall, I haven't watched any YouTube, and all my training came from just trialing and failing and succeeding sometimes, which right now I understand maybe wasn't the right move because I'm educating myself right now, and I understand how long it took me to establish some sort of techniques. It's good because I now know everything from inside. I didn't just learn someone else's technique and said, okay, now I can go and teach it. But I know all the mistakes I made and I can teach these things to my students. But if I just wanted to learn something and start my baking career, I probably would have completed the training instead of just trialing things. Because the amount, and look, back then I could afford doing this because it was still a hobby. I didn't care whether I'm profitable or not. I was buying every piece of equipment I needed. Like if it needed hand blender, I was going and buying the best of the best. Researching, okay, what's the most expensive one? I'll go and get it. Do I need a new kitchen machine? Which one is the best? Okay, cooking chef. Do I need cooking feature? I don't care. I need it to get it. I can afford it. Or like, okay, so I'm going to try and bake the cake and I'll throw all the ingredients together. If it didn't work, I will do it again. Doesn't matter. It's not an order and I don't have to care about wastage. But when I started baking properly, I'm like, oh my God, how much it's going to cost me? I don't have income now. So it's very different. And you start thinking, well, you should put education in place before you bake and decorate.
That's amazing. It's also when I look at this first year of yours, and this, you had in one level a lot of confidence in putting together your product, right? And going out there and doing it. And then you have these slip ups and you keep trying. But I think what also seems to help you too is that this is about the time that you're obviously taking advantage of social media and you're posting what you do and you're getting feedback. And from your career have worked with so many interesting brands, some luxury brands. It seems like a lot of that has influenced you in how you project your social media because the quality of what you produce today and even going back is of a very high standard. So it matches that ability to carry your brand as luxury, just like you used to work with luxury brands.
And also what she loves. So she loves like luxury brands,
Yeah.
luxury clothes.
Yeah.
You know?
So you tie it all together. My question to you is, did that help you? Did the social media aspect also at that time, it was a bit easier several years ago to promote yourself on social media. Did that help you to really gain a following, customer base, and confidence to grow?
Firstly, I wanted just to know that it's not luxury brands. I like the design part. And normally, if it's a luxury brand, they put a lot of creativity in it.
Okay.
That's the reason I like it. It's not because it's like, if it's a nice bag, and I'm not going to call the names, and it's got a big name and everyone wants it, but it's just boring bag, I wouldn't be interested.
Sure.
But if it's a very small boutique designer that has something unusual, like a bag in the way of like a bouquet of flowers or whatever, then I'd pay my attention. So that's what luxury to me.
Yes, understand.
And if we're talking about the social media, I know a lot of people saying that social media is not good for you. I cannot be thankful enough for social media, for a lot of things, for gaining the followers, and for me personally, growing my confidence. Even though I was working in sales and marketing, yes, I had a good career, but I was such a shy person, you have no idea, from my childhood pretty much. And that was the reason why I actually chose career in sales, to overcome my hesitation and my shyness. I remember when I was a teenager, I wouldn't even talk to people because I was too shy. I wanted to, but I just had lack of confidence. And even though I worked in sales, I remember going to corporate events and standing in a crowd of peers, and I would never start conversation myself. But when I started getting social media following, obviously it helps when you're being praised for something and some acknowledgement as well. So I definitely grew so much in the last, say, 2-3 years, apart from having lots of followers. But it's just the feedback that I'm getting. It makes me feel that I'm worthwhile and what I'm doing is the right thing, not only in terms of designs, but now again, educating students. And when they're sending me messages saying, oh, look at this, I couldn't bake a cake. Now I made someone's wedding cake and I made it my career, because I have students that my consistent students for the last couple of years. And it just makes me feel so big and so important. So I'm just really, I think social media is incredible in that regard.
Can you talk about how much time and effort goes into creating one of your reels? Because you've got not only an absolutely show-stopping cake, but your clothes, your hair accessories, your jewelry, the background, the lighting, the music, the mood, and then post-production, the editing.
Oh, yeah. It's like multiple camera angles and there's a lot to it.
Yeah. I just want to understand the amount of effort that you put into it so that we can all understand like what it takes to get to that standard, because it is setting the standard, the benchmark in the cake industry and beyond.
Well, Instagram is not making our life easier, right? Yeah. Because before we were learning how to use the camera, and I remember it's taken me a couple of years to understand how the natural light works. I think maybe 3 years ago, I decided I can't fight with this natural light anymore because it's always changing. I couldn't understand how it all works, even though I had very nice camera. I ended up inviting a professional photographer who helped me to set up a studio in a garage so I can use artificial light. And it didn't work. Then I finally understood how to take nice pictures, consistency. And then Instagram is changing everything. I was like, now guys, we want you to create videos. And I'm learning how to make videos, how to do post-production. It's actually enormous. I think recording reel and then editing is taking as much time as making a cake. And I'm actually trying, it's easy to film with a phone and then edit in programs like Apple program or InShot or some other programs. They're quite easy, but then you don't get depth of field and you don't have the mysterious look in your reels. So I'm trying to work with 2 SLR cameras, trying to learn all about the videography. And I've been doing it for almost a year. I tried actually sending my videos to someone else to edit, but they just don't understand what I want there. Because I'm the person creating the process. And in my reels, I think it's very important to show not just the pretty side, but to give some helpful information for my followers, to show them some techniques. And it should be in a very short amount of time. So nowadays they recommend it's 30 seconds. And when someone else edits your videos, they just don't understand it. When I was flying to Bali last week, I was editing my Wednesday reel, and I had 3.5 hours of filming material from 2 SLR cameras. So at that time I decided to film with SLR. I needed to make it 30 seconds. So the flight to Bali was 6 hours. 5 out of 6 I was editing. That's how long it is.
That's the filming beforehand, which is another, 5 or 6 hours. The assembly, the making the cake.
Yeah, when you're filming yourself, you're not always seeing yourself. So you need to change the camera angles, you need to change tripod position to make close-ups. And it's really difficult.
Clean up a bit, clean so it looks nice.
Oh, yes, of course. Oh my God. And like, the focus wasn't focusing where it needed. So let's do it again. It's a big process. And I know there's some cake makers and some artists that have say, spouse who is a professional videographer or photographer, and that's ideal combination. My husband is an engineer. He helps me with the structural part sometimes when I need to, but videography is all my prerogative right now.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask. You know you're about to go bake a cake, right? Or maybe you're making one right now. A really nice and expensive tall cake with some beautiful decorations and maybe some dried flowers or a large topper. What are you going to box that in when you give that to the customer? Please don't tell me you're going to use extenders and staple that to a standard flimsy box and then wrap the thing in plastic and then give that to the customer hoping for the best. I have a better idea. Why don't you try OLBAA tall cake boxes? They're gorgeous, strong, they come in 14 or 20 inches tall. You can easily put them together and they're perfect for your beautiful cakes. I mean, you've just spent 4 or 5 hours making this thing. Show it off in something that's going to elevate your brand to another level and then wow the customer. Check them out at www.olbaa.shop. That's OLBAA. All right, back to the show. I want to ask you about the structural bit in a second, because I know there's an interesting story there with that. But just on the time and the time management in your day-to-day, as of a few months ago, I understand you still don't have anyone who fully works for you. You're doing everything yourself. Is that correct?
I am doing everything myself, but in the last 3 weeks, I got a lady who comes once or twice a week when I usually have big cake orders. She doesn't have any education in cake baking or anything like that. She just happened to be available. And she's actually came from Ukraine just recently because of everything that happened. And they just recently got permanent residency. So she's still trying to establish herself. And I needed someone to assist me with the cake alchemy course when I was filming it late last year. So then we just clicked and she's coming once or twice a week to help me with bits and pieces. So I'm learning how to work in a team now, and it's fabulous. I really love it.
I can only imagine how you manage to structure your day on a regular day when you have clients you're dealing with, thinking about your cakes and your inspiration, doing your video production, photography, setup. You only have so many hours in a day to do everything. And you are also teaching. You've also got content to create for classes. So the list just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
And so having now somebody to help you must now wake up and have some kind of like free hour or something that you just can use for something else. It must feel amazing to get to this point.
No, that's not true.
It's still...
Yeah, we're just working longer and more and trying to create more things. And the biggest help with having someone is not actually physical work. It's not that she will help me to cut the petals for my roses. It's not that. But it's having that peer that I'm sitting together with and discussing my ideas and saying, oh, what do you reckon? I've got this idea. I'm setting up this like angle for reel. What do you reckon? It's lack of community of like-minded people. That's what the biggest challenge. And even with the cake design, I will tell you what, the biggest challenge for me to decide what I'm going to make, because how I structure my cake orders, majority of my cake orders is actually the design is left up to me. So when someone comes to me to order the cake, I'm not bluntly saying it's my way or no way. Of course, I'm compliant with what their general requirements are, but my clients are agreeing to give me the opportunity and some creative space to create their final cake design. They don't know what it's going to be at the end. They are okay with that. So that's the type of clients I have, and it was always like this. So that's why for me, it's the hardest part is to decide what design is going to be on the day. Even though I have so many ideas, it's just putting structure together and having someone assisting me and helping me to go into the right direction is the biggest part. I'm really missing the community around me. I know you guys you're trying to create that community of bakers. And when I spoke to you before, I was very excited to hear this. That's exactly what I'm missing.
I totally relate with you here, because I know when I was starting my own cake business, and I transitioned from the corporate world as well. So I was used to quite a busy environment and lots of corridor conversations and constant chatter. And then to come just work out of my own kitchen on my own, long hours, lots of cleaning, lots of decisions to be made, and lots of, you could get customer objections or customer design ideas, all sorts when you're starting off. And I think for me that it was quite lonely. I felt really lonely. I felt suddenly, obviously there was motherhood and there's picking the kids up from school and dropping them off, but the thing in between was quite lonely, and I just feel like it's that little bit that's missing in the cake business world. It's definitely there from an online perspective. It's great when you go to cake shows and you can connect with people or go on cake courses, but the day-to-day grind is, if you've not got a partner to bounce off or someone immediately down the road or a friend that you can just pick up, it's really hard. And that was the passion behind starting this podcast, was to share these stories and also share the ups and the downs, and that maybe you bring a little bit of inspiration or connect with someone somewhere else in the world that goes, yeah, I felt that, or wow, she's felt that, he's felt that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you are, speaking of the world and your followers, and you have a lot, you, through your Cake Academy, as I understand it, it's not just that you have online courses that people can sign up for and teach and follow, but you are being invited to go to other locations to teach. So I think this is what really fascinates me is, in such a short period of time, you've gone from early 2018, you started this business full time. And then come 2020, you've started this Cake Academy. So in a 2-year time span, you've done that. And now we're 2 years later, and you've already been thousands of students trained, and now you're being invited around the world. So you have a very quick progression in your brand and your business, going from one thing to the next, which is fascinating to see. So my question to you is, do you know where you're taking your company at this point, or have things just organically come to you and you've decided, actually, this is probably a good idea, maybe I should do this? How has that happened for you?
Well, if you're talking about the Ekats Academy, I've always wanted to share my knowledge online. And I started it during the COVID. You were right, mentioning 2020.
Yeah.
Then it's taken off. I did a sample course for my students that I couldn't visit in Melbourne because of the lockdowns. So I had to cancel the class, and instead I recorded the video class for them. And then I decided to share information about the class on my Instagram to see if someone else is interested. And I had quite a lot of students that decided to purchase that course, and I had a fabulous feedback. In fact, out of 12 students that got this course in replacement of hands-on class, I offered each of them 30 minutes video call to go through all the steps if they have any questions. None of them contacted me with any questions. I followed up. I said, guys, do you need any assistance? And they said, no, it's all clear. We have no questions. Maybe a couple of them emailed me with a couple of questions, but overall, I was thinking, well, it must be I'm doing not too bad job with the clear on the material that was presented to them. And for the first year, I thought, well, I'll be focusing on my online courses, and that's what I'm doing. It didn't really have any other vision of where my Ekats company is going to. Right now, I have so many other ideas in my head. I definitely want to start my clothing line, and I started working towards that because I had a dream to be a designer. And again,
amazing.
I didn't mention that when I wanted to be an artist when I was a teenager, my close people, my family was saying, oh, don't worry about being an artist. Like, you can be an artist as a hobby. You will never be able to make it as your career. I had so many people saying that. In fact, when I was quitting my corporate career, every friend of mine and my family, apart from my husband, but my mom was like, don't be silly. You will waste your health in the kitchen. You will hate, it's not going to be the art. You will hate the cakes in some time. Why are you quitting this corporate career? Don't worry about this. And I still went ahead with that. And the same with fashion design. I put a big barrier in front of me thinking, there's millions of fashion designers nowadays. Someone is doing well, someone is forgotten, someone is going bankrupt. But now I truly believe that I'm not going to become maybe fashion designer like Christian Dior or Chanel. Maybe I'm not going to be worldwide known, but I definitely have an opportunity to try it. So I definitely want to do that. And I definitely want to expand my academy at some stage and give the opportunity to some other artists who don't have the platform to present their knowledge. They can use my platform. In fact, I'm working with one of those artists right now, and there will be exciting announcement in a couple of months coming soon. We actually had a joint project already recorded. It's super, super exciting. Nobody really knows in English-speaking world, but I think she's a top 10 artist in her craft. So that's which areas I want to bring my business to.
It feels very full circle, almost like going back to your early childhood and how your mum's influence and making those dresses and now to be coming back so many years later and actually be fulfilling that dream that your mum was doing for you, right? That you get to do for others.
I feel my biggest purpose right now is to encourage other people that don't believe in themselves and don't believe that they can be creative and make a living of it. I would like to encourage those people to give it a go and to make it successful. So that's definitely a project I'm working towards. I'm 40 this year. In June. I really want to put together some sort of, I don't know whether it's going to be in the form of book or in the form of training or in the form of just a story and video about myself, but I want to put something really inspiring and encouraging for anyone, not only in the baking world, but anyone in a creative frame of mind that may be working in corporate, maybe they don't have a job, maybe stay-at-home moms, but they want to expand and explore themselves from a creative perspective. I want to put the thoughts in their head that they can, and they can build their confidence, they can build their brand, they can be what they want to be, they can wear what they want, they can have as many hours a day working as they want.
It's brilliant. This is really cool. I'm so excited for you. I think this is going to be such an amazing thing. You can inspire people in so many different ways. And I think what's really interesting is obviously, for me, not being the baker and being in the baking world, we still feel like we come across hundreds, if not thousands of bakers through socials and connecting through conferences and whatnot. And I was saying to Rachel earlier, so I haven't come across yet, at least, any other baker who has been able to marry fashion with cakes so effortlessly like this. And so I wonder about that. And I think, well, why is that? Is it just because it's difficult? Is it because people don't have the platform, the confidence? And I think for you to be able to give back in that way and show that you've been able to become successful doing this through creativity as one of your core elements. I believe you have 4 core elements, but creativity is one of them. To be able to express that to other people and give them a platform that allows them to grow on, it's a fantastic thing. Much credit to you, because these things are hard to do and it takes time and it takes a lot of effort. So it's brilliant. Let's go to something a bit different. So structure, you mentioned structure before, and I know your husband is a structural engineer in the form of designing bridges.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be quite interesting because leveraging your husband in some of your cake designs, if you could share some stories around that, because we understand about how you've used him to challenge yourself and him to come up with these amazing multi-tier cakes. I understand you've used your husband to ask him to develop a structure for you from which to place the cake on. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It happened quite a few times. There was a lot of structures that he developed and I haven't used because I still didn't find time for that. Because like a lot of artistic people, I get an idea in my head and I want to get it done right now. I'm like, oh, let's get it done. I want this hanging cake or whatever. And my husband's quite good like this. He takes any challenge straight away. You don't need to ask twice. He goes and gets it done. And then I forget and move on. So I have several structures just sitting quite a few months. But we had some not that cool stories with his structures. In fact, the first structure he was making was gravity-defying cake for a friend. It was Alice in Wonderland, and it was meant to be like all crooked I've got that cake in my Instagram, so if you want, I'll send it. Maybe you can use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the friend is pretty cool. She's all right. But I mean, it was paid order as well, bear in mind. And we delivered the cake. It was all right. We set it up. And when he was creating the structure, we had to use some polystyrene. And back then, we just didn't think that the dowels will punch through polystyrene. When you make styrene, say, dividers or any polystyrene structures, you need to put cardboard so the dowels don't punch through polystyrene. So he's a structural engineer, and he's built a lot of bridges around the world, just bear in mind, in a lot of countries that people drive through every day. He reckons he's great, but my cake collapsed when they were about to cut.
Oh my gosh.
So they have a really cool images. It was a birthday party of the girl, and they have cool images. The cake collapsing, and the husband is catching the tears as they're falling. So yeah,
I just can't believe it.
it was dreadful. It was horrible. I felt so bad, but yeah. So the polystyrene was punched by the dowels, and it was divided, like this shape divided, right?
Yeah.
In between the tears, so they're all like on angle.
Yeah.
And because the polystyrene was punched, the tears started falling, and the cake collapsed.
Oh, the whole thing just tumbled.
We learned a lesson. Yeah, so now I know, and I can teach my students from experience, not because I learned from someone else. And now you need to secure your cake. Or I got another situation when two-tier cake, one tier slid from another because I didn't have center dowel. And a lot of bakers still don't put center dowel on two-tier cake.
Yeah.
They think, it's not a big deal. But what happened, because we have very high humidity here, the cake was taken out of the fridge by staff in the restaurant. Because of the humidity, it was so slippery. So when they started cutting the top tier at the wedding, it just started sliding off the cake.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot of things we learn about structures.
Absolutely.
Including my husband.
And your element of having to bake in heat and humidity and the after effects of that once you take cakes outside. Rachel's got lots of experience of that from us living in Singapore and dealing with just the heat and that limited window that you have to delicately create something when it's 30 degrees outside. It's awful.
Yeah, and some of those things are uncontrollable because, like you said, you delivered it and it was with like the hotel staff, and it was the hotel staff that actually took the cake out and left it, or even sometimes after best advice of please keep it in the fridge for as long as possible. You can just, sometimes it's completely out of your hands.
Maybe because I worked for big companies and the expectations in customer service were so high there, I still feel like it's bakers' responsibility to ensure everything that is possible, that there's no accidents. Because I know if something happens during the wedding or birthday party, any event, and it happened with my cake, even if I didn't drop it, but a member of staff dropped it, it will spoil majority of couples or majority of birthday people day. And even though I wasn't directly involved, I need to make sure that every step is taken care of. I give instructions to people who knew how to take the cake away or how to bring it if it has to be brought. So I feel, as being creative side of baking business, we also have to manage whole process to ensure that at the end of the day it's all fabulous and successful. And I learned it hard way.
It's your brand on the line at the end of the day, right? So,
yeah. Even if they know it's not your fault, there will be a bitter taste still. So that's not what I want.
I just wanted to switch gear and just talk about how important the award that you received from the Cake and Decorating Industry Awards in Australia has been to you. Because I know you received it around 2022. And what did that mean to you personally to achieve such accreditation, but also what impact did it have, any impact on your brand at the time?
I think the first award I received was around 2019 in Brisbane, the International Cake Show. That was the most remarkable achievement because I remember going to those shows and when I felt like I'm no one. And when I submitted my first cake, which I had to fly from Sydney to Brisbane as well, and I received an award for the best wafer paper flower artist, that was absolutely overwhelming. And that gave me so much more confidence. in continuing my art and even growing even bigger in future. I'm trying to take part in every competition. However, the award you're talking about, it was late last year. That wasn't a competition. It was just someone else nominated me for that. And then there was a jury that voted for me, and I think it was public vote as well. So I wasn't really involved. And it was the first award of that kind when I didn't have to submit any work. That was overwhelming. When I got an email saying that I'm nominated, it was a massive deal. I was like, wow, someone must have nominated me. And then I went through a series of selection process, and then they invited me to Melbourne, and I was, I think, one of 5 in finals. And walking on that stage, I just didn't even have a speech prepared because everyone was a very strong artist. And I was thinking, well, some people been in industry for over 10 years or 15 years. And I wasn't even hoping that I'm going to get anything, any award. It was quite awkward. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know, who do I thank? Thank you, my husband. Thank you, my son, for supporting me. I was just standing there saying, guys, I don't know what to say. Thank you very much. That's all.
That's great. Rachel, you were at the same show in 2019, right?
Yeah,
In
Brisbane, yeah.
She was there as well.
Wow.
I believe. Not that you may have run into each other, but...
As a participant, just spectator.
Yeah.
I took a
Really?
course there as well with a cake artist.
From South America, right?
Colombian cake
Colombian,
artist. Australian one.
Bailitoso?
Yes.
Camilo.
Yes.
He's a very good friend of mine. He's just absolutely fabulous.
Yes. So I remember going down and attending his course. But it's interesting because I know not every country, I don't know if it's quite unique to Australia, but there's to have cake awards. So it's interesting to hear how it works in Australia. So it's either you submit a cake or there's a separate set of awards, which is a nomination, which comes through either the public or through a panel of... That's also quite unique because I don't think every country has something like that. I know in the UK we don't have that.
No, there's nothing really awards-wise.
Okay.
It's quite nice to see how Australia set some of these interesting trends in the cake industry by having awards and having this recognition. We don't really see it as much out here, which is a shame, but hopefully that's something that will change soon.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But
amazing, really.
I think, I'm not sure about the awards, but overall, looking at Australia and cake decorating, cake design, I think we're quite advanced here with the amount of ingredients we have. And the industry is just massive in Australia.
Yeah. If you think some of the major ingredients that are international are Australian, right? They've come from there and they've gone internationally. And even for Rachel, when she was getting into baking, when we were in Singapore living there, a lot of her inspiration came mostly from Australia.
Yeah. I don't know whether that was just the algorithm from Instagram showing me cake artists down in Australia, but there was definitely a lot of Australian cake artists and a lot of different designs as well. That it was very, back in 2017, 18, incredible kind of styled cakes that I'd never seen before. So I was really impressed.
Yeah, Australia's quite different like that.
Well, listen, so we're coming to the end of our chat. And one thing that we love to do with all of our guests is just a few quick fire questions where we're just going to ask you a question. First thing that comes to mind, you can explain it. You don't have to, though. And we can go on to the next one. So I'm going to go first. And it's a preference question. So which do you prefer using the most? American buttercream, Swiss meringue buttercream, ganache, or fondant?
Ganache.
Ganache. Okay, Rachel.
Can I ask you why?
Well, first I'm in Australia, so it's very stable. And I think it's very tasty because it's got cream and chocolate. What else do you want?
That's interesting. One aspect of baking you won't compromise on?
It will be chocolate. Yes, I use the best chocolate that is available.
Excellent.
I believe it's I think the best brand.
Excellent. Okay, how about a baking book from your bookshelf you'd like to share?
I'd like to share the book by my talented friend, Zoe Clark. She's from UK. And I got her book, the wedding cake book.
Oh, excellent.
The lace cakes. It's called The Lace Cakes. So that's a book I really love.
Brilliant.
I'm just taking a note of that.
Yes, check it out. It's
definitely will do. Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much, Ekaterina. It's been really insightful, We really just appreciate your time, giving us your background, your stories, and all the interesting bits in between. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.
And that wraps up episode 11 of my baking journey. Really hope you enjoyed that. Check out the show notes for all the information on Ekats, where to find her online. And please, if you do enjoy this podcast, do not forget to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast app so that you'll immediately have the chance to hear the next episode as soon as it comes out, which is next week. So we will see you in a few days' time. And don't forget, just before we go, this podcast is brought to you by OLBAA, packaging for bakers designed by a baker. Check us out online at www.olbaa.shop. Take care.